I'd frankly never heard of the company Aspiration before, and I'd never heard a whiff of anything around an endorsement deal with Kawhi. When people talk about a smoking gun, that's obviously circumstantial. It means the gun is still smoking. It must have recently fired.
DEA 88 Investments LP chose to invest that precise amount while this company was basically sinking into the ocean. And it turned out to be a man named Dennis.
So do you remember that Kawhi Leonard scandal that we covered a few days ago? The one where Pablo Torre exposed how Kawhi got $48 million through a fraudulent tree planting company that Steve Ballmer invested in? Well, buckle up, because the thing just went from suspicious to absolutely insane. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop, like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to get the latest NBA news to your device. And now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro. We made over $500 on Thursday Night Football and Prize Picks, and if you tailed my picks, then you probably made some good money too. So far, we're 3 for 3 on all Prize Pick promos for this new NFL season. They're hooking us up with another promo for this Sunday. All Taylor Swift's fiance needs is 1 receiving yard for his square to cash, and now Prize Picks allows you to stack the same player for multiple categories, and they're the only gaming app that lets you do this. So let's take advantage of this. For Thursday Night Football, this is what I'm running with. First, make sure you sign up with my promo code microphone to get $50 in lineups when you make a play of $5 or more. So for those of you guys that use your free square the way I suggested you to, you may have noticed that Brock Purdy is out for week 2. So thankfully his square isn't going to count, and all we need is Tua to bounce back versus the Patriots for our $25 to turn into $75. Now if you've already signed up, I have you covered as well. My Discord community has already been profiting like crazy as a result of this new season, and if you want to join, just click on the WAP link in the description down below. And thank you, Prize Picks, for today's sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? What happened on Thursday might be the smoking gun that takes down the Los Angeles Clippers. If you believe Adam Silver's press conference from Wednesday, it might be the reason why every owner in the league is suddenly sweating bullets about their own side deals.
Number one, the burden is on the league. If we're going to discipline a team, an owner, a player, or constituent members of the league, I think as with any process that requires a fundamental sense of fairness, the burden should be on the party that is, in essence, bringing those charges. And then in terms of your specific question about circumstantial evidence, I was only quasi-joking with someone earlier that when people talk about a smoking gun, that's obviously circumstantial. It means the gun is still smoking. It must have recently fired. I'd say in the case of the league, we and our investigators look at the totality of the evidence. So I think whether mere appearance, like just by the way those words read, I think as a matter of fundamental fairness, I would be reluctant to act if there was sort of a mere appearance of impropriety. I think that the goal of a full investigation is to find out if there really was impropriety, because also in a public-facing sport, again, the public at times reaches conclusions that later turn out to be completely false. And so I would want anybody else in the situation Mr. Balmer is in now, or Kawhi Leonard for that matter, to be treated the same way I would want to be treated if people were making allegations against me. So the answer is we're not a court of law at the end of the day either, that we have broad authority to look at all information and to weigh it accordingly.
Let me set the stage real quick for anyone who missed our last video. Pablo Torre spent 7 months investigating and found that Kawhi Leonard got paid $48 million for a quote no-show job from a company called Aspiration. Steve Ballmer invested $50 million in this company. A former employee literally told Torre that the deal was to circumvent the salary cap.
What David's looking at with his glasses on is a bankruptcy filing. And on that list of creditors is an LLC that Aspiration owes $7 million. And that LLC's name?
KL2 Aspire LLC.
And what does it list there under manager or member name?
Kawhi Leonard.
What I started doing was scour the internet for any mentions of Aspiration by Kawhi Leonard endorsing Aspiration. And this was hard to find.
Now, after Torre's report dropped, Steve Ballmer went on ESPN with Ramona Shelburne, and honestly, it might have made things worse. The whole interview gave the same type of energy as a publicist trying to stop an individual from ruining things, and honestly, I think Steve Ballmer just made himself look really guilty here.
These are guys who committed fraud. Look, They conned me.
You're one of the richest men in America.
They conned me. I made an investment in these guys thinking it was on the up and up, and they conned me.
Guys, 3 times in one sentence, Steve Ballmer said that they conned me. The richest owner in sports, worth $150 billion. The guy who ran Microsoft wants us to believe that he got scammed by a tree planting company. But here's where Balmer really messed up. He told Shelburne that the Clippers introduced Kawhi to Aspiration in November of 2021.
You never directed anyone from Aspiration to do an endorsement deal with Kawhi Leonard?
No, I didn't, and more importantly, we, the Clippers, did not. We didn't give him direction. We made an introduction as is appropriate under the rules.
A
lot of sponsors do like to, they call it activate by doing something also with players. We made the introduction, and that was that.
So you're telling me that the deals were done, but then you introduced them anyway, and then coincidentally, Kawhi signs a $48 million deal where he doesn't have to do anything, and it specifically says the deal ends if he leaves the Clippers? Dude, come on, Steve. When Shelburne asked why Aspiration would pay Kawhi Leonard $28 million, wait, actually, sorry, $48 million with the stock options, Balmer said he didn't know, and he has no ability to predict why they do that. The guy who has been cooperating with a Department of Justice investigation into this company claims he never wondered why they were paying his star player more than Leonardo DiCaprio, Drake, and Robert Downey Jr. combined. But here's what dropped on Thursday that changes everything, and when I say everything, I mean this could be the difference between the Los Angeles Clippers losing some draft picks and Steve Ballmer potentially being forced to sell the team. You guys ready for this? So Pablo Torre got his hands on bank statements showing that in December of 2022, when Aspiration was literally dying, like they were about to go bankrupt, Kawhi Leonard was supposed to get his quarterly payment of $1.75 million. But Aspiration was broke, they couldn't pay him. Then something miraculous happened. On December 6th, 2022, a company called DEA 88 Investments wired $1.99 million to Aspiration. 9 days later, on December 15th, Kawhi Leonard got his $1.75 million payment. Oh, and that same day, Aspiration laid off 20% of their staff. Now, you're probably wondering, what is the significance of this? Well, the significance of this is the guy who owns DEA 88 Investments, Dennis Wong, the Clippers' minority owner, and Steve Ballmer's college roommate from Harvard, the guy who owns 1% of the team and sits courtside with Steve Balmer at games. Let me make this crystal clear for you guys. The company was dying. They owed Kawhi Leonard money. Uncle Dennis was reportedly furious, calling them demanding payment. And then, out of nowhere, the Clippers' minority owner invests exactly enough money to cover Kawhi's payment, plus a little extra for the wire fees. A former Aspiration finance employee told Torre, and I quote, "It really looks like the Clippers, through Dennis Wong, put in $2 million in order for Aspiration to be able to make the $1.75 million payment to Kawhi. That's what it looks like to me." And if you think this is a coincidence, it gets so much worse. This was the first time that Dennis Wong had ever invested in Aspiration. The company's about to go bankrupt. They can't pay their employees. They're under federal investigation, and Dennis Wong decides, yeah, you know what? This is a good time to invest in this company. You know, I think they're going places. Come on, guys. But wait, it gets better. Or worse if you happen to be a Clipper fan. You know what else Torre found out? Dennis Wong's daughter worked at Aspiration. She was a project manager there when all of this was going down. So we're supposed to believe that Wong didn't know the company was collapsing when his own daughter worked there? The Clippers responded to this new report with a statement that basically said that the details of our relationship with Aspiration are under NBA investigation, but it is clear that the company was a house of cards that defrauded Steve and many others. Notice what they didn't say. They didn't deny that Wong made the investment. They didn't deny the timing. They didn't deny that it went straight to Kawhi Leonard. They just said that Aspiration was fraudulent. Yeah, no kidding. That's kind of the point. Now let's talk about the Adam Silver press conference from Wednesday, because this is where things get really interesting. Silver came out and said that the burden of proof is on the NBA, not the Clippers.
The burden should be on the party that is, in essence, bringing those charges. I would be reluctant to act if there was sort of a mere appearance of impropriety.
And then he said something that made every lawyer's ears perk up.
I was only quasi-joking with someone earlier that when people talk about a smoking gun, that's obviously circumstantial. It means the gun is still smoking. It must have recently fired.
You know what that tells me? Silver knows they probably won't find a literal email from Balmer saying, pay Kawhi to circumvent the cap. But he's signaling that circumstantial evidence like, oh, I don't know, a minority owner magically investing the exact amount needed to pay Kawhi Leonard right when he needs to be paid might be enough. And here's what nobody's really talking about. Silver also said that my powers are very broad. I have a full range of financial penalties, draft picks, suspensions, etc. That etc. is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. You know what falls under etc.? Forcing an owner to sell. But here's the real reason I think other owners are freaking out. Remember when the Toronto Star reported that Uncle Dennis asked the Raptors for similar deals back in 2019? He wanted ownership in the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Maple Leafs. When they said no to that, he asked for $10 million a year in sponsorship money that the Raptors would arrange, but Kawhi wouldn't have to do anything for. Does that sound familiar? It's literally the exact same playbook. And the Toronto Raptors still said no. And props to the Toronto Raptors because they won a championship with Kawhi Leonard. Could you just imagine how badly they must have wanted Kawhi to come back so they could run it back with the same exact team and try to dominate the Eastern Conference and repeat? Remember, this is the summer of 2019. The Golden State Warriors aren't the Golden State Warriors for this year because they lost Klay Thompson to a torn ACL, eventually a torn Achilles, but he didn't tear his Achilles then. They lost Kevin Durant to the Brooklyn Nets a few days prior. LeBron James left to the Los Angeles Lakers a season prior. The entire Eastern Conference was running through the Toronto Raptors if Kawhi Leonard would have stayed, and they still refused to break the rules in this particular instance. So I gotta give credit where credit's due, because Toronto Raptors fans must be heartbroken at this. They would have kept Kawhi Leonard if it wasn't for this deal. The Los Angeles Lakers even said no when Uncle Dennis asked them for part ownership, a house, and a private jet. But the Clippers, they found a way to say yes without technically saying yes. Bruce Arthur from the Toronto Star said his sources told him the requests to the Raptors line up almost perfectly with what Kawhi Leonard ended up getting from Aspiration. It's almost like Uncle Dennis had a number in mind, around $10 million a year, and kept shopping until he found someone willing to pay it. So think about this for a second. You're Dennis Wong, you're worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Your buddy Steve already lost $50 million in this company. It's going bankrupt. The feds are investigating, and you decide to throw in $2 million for what? To save a company that's already dead? Or to make sure that one specific payment goes through? The timing is everything here. This wasn't some investment made when Aspiration looked promising. This was made when the company was literally laying off employees the same day they paid Kawhi Leonard. This was a rescue mission, not an investment. Now, the Honorable Mark Cuban came out defending Steve Ballmer, saying Steve isn't that dumb to let the company go bankrupt if he was using it to funnel money. But Mark, my brother, what if he didn't have a choice? What if feds were closing in and they had to let it fail? What if keeping it alive would have exposed even more? And think about this. If you're running a legitimate endorsement deal, why does the team's minority owner need to personally fund your payment? Why is Uncle Dennis personally calling to demand money? Why is the payment marked as critical in the company's books when they're laying off employees to keep the company running? Adam Silver said something else interesting in his press conference.
It was news to me. I'd frankly never heard of the company Aspiration before, and I'd never heard a whiff of anything around an endorsement deal with Kawhi or anything around engagement with the Los Angeles Clippers. So it was all new to me.
The commissioner of the NBA didn't know that one of his star players had a $48 million endorsement deal. Now, here's where I think it gets really sketchy, guys, because either Adam Silver is lying to protect the league, or the Los Angeles Clippers did such a good job hiding this secret that nobody knew. I mean, the commissioner didn't even know. And if it was that secret, then why? What legitimate endorsement deal needs to be hidden from the league's office? Here's what I think is really happening. The NBA knows this is bad. I mean, really bad. But they also know that if they come down too hard on the Clippers, they might expose similar deals around the league. Remember, Pablo Torre told us that this is just the first investigation he's doing. Do you know what other deal is very suspicious? What about Jalen Brunson signing an early 4-year, $156.5 million deal instead of waiting to sign a way larger 5-year maximum extension worth closer to $270 million last year? Brunson literally took a $113.5 million discount to stay with the Knicks. He didn't have to do that. We've seen pay cuts before, but we've never seen pay cuts at that magnitude for a player that's in his prime. And look, I'm not out here saying that Jalen Brunson certainly did something sketchy, but Pablo Torre said he's investigating that next. And this would be the NBA's worst nightmare, because if similar deals are exposed and we find out that NBA players have ulterior motives for joining teams, the entire fiber of the league could collapse. The Ringer quoted a team executive saying people around the league are having a hard time buying the Clippers' denials, and it's a stretch to believe that Aspiration acted alone. Think about it. How many other teams have sponsors that also sponsor their players? How many of those deals are actually legitimate? How many owners have invested in companies that coincidentally pay their stars? Silver stressed that he needs to see totality of evidence before acting, but what evidence could be more total than this? I mean, you have Steve Ballmer invests $50 million, Kawhi gets $48 million. The payment structure requires Kawhi to stay with the Clippers. Kawhi does zero work for the money. When the company can't pay, the minority owner invests exactly what's needed. The payment goes through 9 days later, and the company immediately lays off employees. If that's not enough evidence, then what is? A signed confession? A video of Balmer handing Kawhi a bag of cash while saying, "This is so we could get around the salary cap." And look at how carefully Balmer answered questions in his ESPN interview. When asked if Uncle Dennis had requested impermissible benefits, he said this:
They know the rules. They, meaning Kawhi and his representatives, including his uncle. We know the rules.
But guys, that's not a no. That's lawyer speak for saying, I'm not answering that question. Just like when he said they conned me 3 times in one sentence when asked about Aspiration. You know who doesn't get conned out of $50 million? The guy who ran Microsoft. The guy worth $150 billion. And there's a nuclear option that we need to discuss, because the ramifications of this are just insane. If the NBA finds the Clippers guilty, they could void Kawhi's contract immediately. He'd become a free agent right now, right before the NBA season starts. Could you imagine this for a second? The OKC Thunder have cap space. The Spurs have cap space. I don't know if Kawhi would go back to San Antonio after everything that had happened, but still, this brings a new element of spice to the NBA season. But honestly, whoever would sign Kawhi Leonard would have to deal with a very long suspension for him, which would just give him an additional excuse to load manage, I guess. But this is way bigger than just Kawhi Leonard. This is about the integrity of the entire salary cap system. One team executive told The Ringer that if the cap becomes meaningless, it fucks franchise values. That's billions of dollars at stake. And remember, the NBA already has a precedent for this. In 2000, they hammered the Timberwolves for the Joe Smith scandal. They took away 5 first-round picks and fined them millions of dollars. But that was just about timing payments differently. This is about secret payments worth $48 million. Remember, Joe Smith just had an under-the-table handshake with Glenn Taylor that after 2 below-the-market deals, they were going to sign him to a very large deal. This is just additional money going to Kawhi Leonard so the Clippers could get around the salary cap and build a stronger team around him. And I guess the funniest part of all this is the fact that they still didn't win anything despite cheating, which is probably the most Clippers part of this entire scandal. Legal experts are saying that this case is way different from past circumvention cases because Kawhi was already at his max contract. He couldn't legally make more money from the Clippers. So this wasn't just circumventing the cap, it was circumventing the entire max contract system. So here's what I think happens next. I think we're about to see the biggest scandal in NBA history unfold. This is on the same tier as Tim Donaghy placing illegal bets on the games that he refereed, in my opinion. Because if Dennis Wong was willing to wire $2 million to save one payment, what else are they hiding? What other payments were made? What other players might be involved? Remember, the Clippers just opened a $2 billion arena. They've got James Harden making $46 million. They're trying to win their first championship ever, and now their best player might have his contract voided. They might lose multiple first-round picks, and bear in mind, they don't have draft picks until 2030. This punishment could be the death of the Clippers for the next 10 years easily. And we might never know the full truth of this. We might not know how deep this goes, but we do know this. The Los Angeles Clippers are in trouble, big trouble. And Adam Silver, despite his careful words about burden of proof and due process, has the power to bring down the hammer. At the end of the day, this is a lose-lose situation for the NBA, but it's an even bigger loss for the Clippers, who thought they they could buy a championship by any means necessary. So the next few weeks are going to be crucial. This story is getting crazier and crazier. Make sure you're subscribed and have our notifications on so you can get the latest on this news. But if you guys haven't heard, Luka Doncic lost a ton of weight and he's dominating Eurobasket. I have a completely separate video on that. I'm going to leave it in the end screen to meet you guys there. I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.